What is a food that makes you think? How did humans discover this was edible? There's a fruit in Brazil that needs to be cooked around 7 days, otherwise it's toxic. Day 6 everyone's puking and shitting. Let's try again this time for 7 days and see if we can eat it. When you're already dying of agonizing starvation, poison sounds pretty palatable. When you're already dying of agonizing starvation, you probably don't start to cook something for 7 days though. Dies of dysentery? Oh hey, Bob left some fruit on his campfire. Eats it. But he goes, no, that's the dysentery fruit. Doesn't get dysentery? Fruit must be cooked for 7 days next to a dead body. Also, don't forget to sacrifice a small animal while facing north. Turn around 3 times and test the fruit's temperature with your left pinky. Otherwise death by dysentery. OMG, please dude, stop. We're all fucking dying, please stop. Guys, come on. One more try. Last one. I swear. Ate it 2 weeks ago. Manisoba is really tasty. Manisoba is the dish. It's made with the leaf of the plant that I think Op is talking about. Cassava is the tuber that is often prepared and served with the dish. Edited for accuracy. Don't have to cook cassava for 2 weeks. Just fry it in oil like a potato and you're good to go. There are 2 types of cassava, bitter and sweet. Sweet you can handle much easier than bitter. Bitter contains about 50x as much cyanide. Learned this the hard way first time eating bitter cassava. I'd only had sweet before, so prepared the bitter cassava the same way, just boiled it in a stew without soaking it for days ahead of time. I ended up super sick and had to go to the hospital. That's really interesting. The people who discovered it must have been the most optimistic persons on earth. Like, we try it. Someone gets poisoned. We cook it. Someone gets poisoned. We cook it 2 hours then. Someone gets poisoned. Let's try 3, that's probably enough. Nope. And just keep doing it. It is said that the cassava leaves were cooked by indigenous people to extract the toxins so they could use it on their arrows for hunting. After 7 days boiling and applying it, the new arrows were no longer effective. How they decided to eat the stew after that escapes me though. Oh, come on, that's easy. If you spend any amount of time working with a substance that you know is absolutely not edible, at some point you're going to have the intrusive thought, I wonder what it tastes like. After a week of constantly reminding yourself to be careful with it because it's poison, you think that once you know it's reached the point where it's not poison anymore, you're not going to immediately give in to the intrusive thought and put that stuff in your mouth. How many people did they have to go through to figure that out? At least 6. 12 would be wild. Oh. It's whole days, not half. Not every kind of toxin kills you, probably they realize that it makes you less sick the more you cook it, and went from there. Then again, I'd feel like they found out the 7 days from a rather stubborn guy. God damn it, I will make this fruit edible, even if it means ages of pain. It's the cassava leaf. And raw cassava can irritate the stomach, but it will only be really dangerous for children and people with health problems. Potatoes. Early potatoes were small, hard, and poisonous. Methods of making them not poisonous included soaking them in running water for weeks or, in the high Andes, leaving them out on rocks high in the mountains so they effectively freeze-dried. Alternatively, you could mix them with clay when eating them. The clay would absorb some of the toxins. Our earliest ancestors in Africa likely ate a ton of yams, which were basically hard roots that I believe are also sometimes toxic. People were probably dead set on making the root vegetables where they ended up edible. Eating root vegetables as a staple might be the most ingrained human tradition. It's a good infinite food hack. You don't really need a lot of resources: flat farmable land, water, healthy soil, seed stock, labor, to get some potatoes going. All you really need is old potato. You also only need 2.5 months for a potato crop, compared to 4-ish for wheat. Multiple harvests in a growing season is nice. Potatoes are honestly a genuine superfood. It is little wonder they took the world by storm once Europeans bought them back from the Americas. You basically just need a bucket of dirt, Any kind of dirt, it doesn't matter, and an old potato and you're set. Any kind of climate, it doesn't matter. That shit grows like a weed, and if you keep planting out a portion of each harvest, within half a year or so you'll have enough on rotation to keep your family fed indefinitely. They are almost nutritionally complete, so you don't even need to supplement them with much to have a healthy diet either. It would have seemed like literal magic to a starving 18th century peasant. They are almost nutritionally complete. Yeah, this is a big deal. Potatoes contain almost all of the nutrients humans need to live, more so than any other single fruit or vegetable. Add salted butter and drink water with some lemon squeezed in and you're good to go. Tubers tend to be really good sources of nutrients, especially carbs, to the point that you can live almost solely off them. They also tend to be easy to grow in the shittiest of conditions. Put that together, and for people back without modern farming technology, tubers become an almost ideal crop. The only issue is that tubers often tend to be poisonous in various ways, but considering all the other upside they have, it's no surprise humans tried so hard to make them work as a food. Right, but how did early humans know that it was worthwhile to cultivate and grow them to the point that they aren't toxic? It isn't like they saw these lumps in the ground and said, "Oh shit, these are packed with nutrients we need, let's grow more of them until they don't kill us." It just doesn't make sense why they kept at growing them without the foresight we have now. The poisons in them don't kill you immediately. In the short term, eating potatoes or whatever would be an easy way to not die hungry, and so it would be a good idea to keep growing them. It would be in the long term that people might notice the side effects once those poisons start accumulating, and eventually people might link the cause and effect. 'Cause they are easy to find, won't be actively trying to kill you until you eat it, and won't run away from you. Before we started grouping together and started using our minds, we were eating insects with a bit of plant food like fruits and root vegetables. Potatoes are really interesting too. The higher in the mountains you get, the color changes from the brown to a purple color. In the US we have basically three options when it comes to potatoes: yellow, red, brown. In Peru, where potatoes were first cultivated, there is an astounding variety of tubers. They have a potato museum celebrating one of humanity's greatest agricultural achievements. We can grow purple here in Canada. They're always surprising when I cut them open. My parents love mashed potatoes from those little purple finger potatoes, but I find them tougher and blander compared to a white or yellow. A quick Google says the potatoes my folks grow are Peruvian purple fingerlings. Some editor forgot his potatoes in running water and then thought they were still edible. Chocolate. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get why they were playing around with the plant and all. The sheer process of getting to chocolate as a product is so weird and bizarre and kinda gross. And then it comes out as the lovely candy we know and love. Chocolate. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get why they were playing around with the plant and all. The sheer process of getting to chocolate as a product is so weird and bizarre and kinda gross. And then it comes out as the lovely candy we know and love. Just came here to say this. The level of effort needed to make chocolate is just insane. I can't fathom the thoughts behind someone saying, "Let's ferment this fruit, and make it up as we go." I had this same thought when I saw a video about how to make cocaine. Who thought, let's smash these leaves up with gasoline? It's so bizarre. It started with just chewing the leaves and noticing a stimulating effect. From there it was, how do we concentrate this as much as possible? And gasoline is fairly cheap. Gasoline is also sometimes used industrially as a cleaner solvent, which is exactly what it does in the process. And they'd use something better if they could. Gasoline is just cheap and easily accessible. That one makes a little more sense if you think about it. People already chewed the coca leaf. Over time people just started looking for more ways to purify it and make it stronger. Chocolate starts out weird as hell and then people figure out how to process it magically. I've read the Aztec cocoa drink made a little more sense as they just boiled the beans for a really long time. Cocaine as we know it today, the refined product, was invented in a lab with fancy chemicals and tools. The crazy gasoline and foot stomp method is a refinement of it to make the process as cheap as possible. I remember when they invented chocolates, sweet chocolate. Edit, for those who don't know what I'm referencing. What's crazy is chocolate as we know it requires the separation and recombination of cocoa solids and fats, and it's really relatively recent discovery. The Mesoamericans who ate chocolate didn't mix it with sugar. It was most like a tea or alcohol for centuries. Yup, then the Spaniards brought it back to Europe and Europeans added a ton of sugar to it, making it more of a dessert drink. There's a fascinating museum of chocolate in Paris that has the whole history along with free samples of the different kinds of chocolate. I always hated it. Almost every edible mushroom. Lots of trial and error there, I bet. There are old foragers and there are bold foragers. There are no old and bold foragers. All mushrooms are edible. Some just once. Definitely not recommended, but most poisonous or deadly mushrooms have a threshold you must eat to have negative consequences. People would start out trying a tiny bit, then a bit more and bit more to see if there were any ill effects. There was a mycologist named Charles McIlvaine in the late 1800s who ate almost every kind of mushroom and reported back on it in his books. He avoided groups of related mushrooms that were already well established as deadly poisonous, some of the Amanitas, but otherwise tried just about everything. He was nicknamed Old Iron Guts. He was a really eccentric and fascinating guy. A decorated Civil War officer. He spent the rest of his life cataloging and testing the edibility of mushrooms in North America and writing about them and their edibility. While he got sick quite often, his descriptions of the bad effects are both voluminous and pretty hilarious. He died of natural causes. Edit, just to add, the vast majority of mushrooms are not poisonous but are inedible due to taste, horrible smell or texture, bitterness, etc. Many can be eaten but almost no one would actually want to eat them. There are many mushrooms that will make you sick but only a small handful of mushrooms are actually deadly to humans. Unfortunately, some of the deadly ones like Amanita phallidae superficially look like they would be good to eat and by all accounts taste good. The majority of human deaths from eating mushrooms are from a small number of species of Amanitas. Many of the rest of human deaths are people eating little brown mushrooms like Galerina incorrectly thinking they are psychoactive. Incidentally, Amanita poisoning is a horrible way to die. You get sick a number of hours after eating them but then recover. However, the toxin is accumulating in your liver, shutting production of RNA and hence killing the cells. A few days after you recover, your liver starts shutting down. If you eat enough of the toxin, the only way to save your life is a liver transplant. I've heard somewhere that Amanita virosa is actually quite delicious were it not for the horrible deadly poison. Delectable mushroom? Or deadly poison? 5 minutes later. Prince Zuko, you know that mushroom I was unsure about? Yeah, and there is another layer of mushroom delicious when cooked but poisonous when raw. Shittic mushrooms are like this. They're not deathly poisonous, but if eaten raw in medium to large amounts can cause severe itching for up to several weeks. Now imagine my face as I read that little tidbit on Google. After I had popped a raw shittic mushroom in my mouth and had already swallowed most of it. Moral of the story, if you aren't sure, Google before taste testing. My logic was, since there's no warning on the store packaging, it must be fine. I didn't get the severe itching, thankfully. Edit, changed. Shittic. 2. Shittic. Edit number 2. Cause of many repeated replies. I fucking get it, all mushrooms should be cooked for one reason or another, y'all can stop echoing now. I think you mean the moral of the story. Poison, poison, tasty fish. La poison he han hanen. Rest in peace, Rena Auberjonois. I have this image of a depressed cave person bracing themselves before downing a pound of portobello, then slowly opening their eyes, looking around expectantly, and going, holy shit, that tastes great actually. Grok, mate. This tastes like a vegan burger. Many Bothans died to find us the edible mushrooms. Can't stop thinking about people that first ate mushrooms they found and just had to go through trial and error of like, this one tastes like beef. This one killed Brian immediately, and this one makes you see God for a week. As a fan of both culinary and psychedelic mushrooms, I've always been a fan of this old Twitter meme. The fun thing about the one that makes you see God for a week is the shaman was the only one allowed to eat them. However, after the shaman ate it, they'd let the tribe drink their shroom piss so they could also trip. Mem, mushroom pee. Cheese is weird. Hey Og, that milk you were storing has gone weird and lumpy. Should I throw it out? Nah, it's still good, pass it here. Rennet, which causes milk to curdle, is naturally present in the stomachs of calves. Some speculate that people may have used stomachs as storage vessels. You put some milk in there, and it curdles. Food is scarce, so you're not about to let it go to waste. Thankfully, the chunky milk actually tastes pretty damn good. Squeeze the moisture out, let it dry, and it keeps for months. Now you still have something to eat in the middle of winter. Joke's on them, I eat it in the summer too. Throw it in a pot, add some broth and some potato, baby, you've got a stew going. That one actually has a plausible theory around it. You need rennet to make cheese from milk, which occurs in sheep's stomachs. Waterskins were made from animal stomachs. Milk was stored in said waterskins and there was enough residual rennet left to make curds. Someone was desperate hungry enough to try to eat the solidified milk in their sheep's stomach. From there it's just refining the process over the generations until you get modern cheese making. Hey Og, I'll give you $5 to eat this. 5 whole, dear? You're trying to kill me, aren't you? Think of it in stages. We domesticated cows because they can pull farm equipment, and give us leather and meat. They produce milk, which something needs to happen to if there is no calf. Now people may go, you not touching that. But we drink milk as babies. They probably would have breastfed longer back then. They were desperate and starving, you wasted nothing. If there was too much milk, then ways would have been found to preserve or store it. You end up with cheese. Yeah, I always find it weird when people act like it's strange to have discovered milk. Milk. Humans breastfeed. Milk is all that babies eat for the first months of their lives. In fact, babies die if they can't have it. It's sweet and nutritious. Early humans must have seen milk as this delicious, miraculous, life-giving elixir. Other mammals also breastfeed, or mammifeed, nurse. It's not exactly hard to make the connection when you see animals nurse their young that yes, there's some kind of milk coming out of those teats' udders too. I wonder if it's tasty and healthy as well. So logically and naturally, humans tried to milk animals as soon as they domesticated them. Cows, but also sheep, donkeys, goats, camels, etc. And in some areas like Europe, humans also started developing lactose tolerance around the same time they domesticated animals and thus started having access to animal milk. Nearly all humans were unable to drink milk until fairly recently. Lactose intolerance is still standard for over half of humans. Cheesemaking was a way not just to store milk for extended periods but literally to make it edible, since it gets rid of most of the lactose. In adulthood is a really important part of this. It's really unevenly distributed as well. Lactose intolerance is between 0% 15% in Europe. The amount of effort you have to go through to make cashews edible. The fuck did someone figure that out? Yes. The shells that surround the cashews apparently contains very toxic oils, and the extraction process they need to do can be hazardous to us humans if not handled correctly. The extraction process has to be done manually, hence why the process is difficult and time-consuming. Probably the reason why they are one of the most expensive nuts on the market when I think about it. We have some relatives who have cashew trees, And when I was a kid, my great-grandma would collect the seeds and throw them on embers for a while until the oil in the seed coat began boiling, then let it cool for a while and then shuck them. Pretty tasty too, since they were roasted. A lot of complicated foods probably started out like this with just enough work to make them edible, then were followed by thousands of years of slow refinement to make them taste best in a preservable way. Fun fact: unlike most other seeds, the cashew grows outside of the fruit. Your mom grows outside the fruit. One of the first staple foods is kinda weird: acorns. Acorns were actually farmed very early in human history, but to make them edible you have to soak them and treat them. Sure, you see animals eat them all the time, but animals also eat tree bark and leaves. Somehow people figured out that you could turn the inside of acorns into flour and basically eradicate hunger by simple picking up acorns for a couple of days. Maize, corn, is kinda crazy, too. Researchers found the plant it was bred from. It's called teosinte, and it's more like a weedy grass, with barely any seeds to eat. Indigenous people bred it for thousands of years to make maize. And then they discovered that to make it more nutritious, they needed to nixtamalize it with lime water and lime made from ashes and limestone. When many Europeans started eating maize as their staple diet, they often got severe malnutrition because they didn't learn the nixtamalization part. Yeah, lots of food we didn't discover they were edible. We've made it edible by genetic selection and complex preparation methods. Mesoamerican contributions: corn and chocolate are genius. P.S. We've also evolved our own bodies to adapt to certain foods, lactose for example. Animals also tree bark and leaves. And here my stupid cat is ignoring all the bark and leaves and trying to eat the plastic corner protector on the wall. Edit: I don't even have a cat. Fugu. Let's eat this fish, dies. Okay, he died. Let me try eating this other part of the fish, dies. Okay. How about I eat only this part of the fish? Not too bad. I came here to say this. Like, just how? Did someone get lucky the first time eating one? Maybe all shared one fish and only one woke up next day? Might be the most plausible answer. My best guess is that people figured out about the poison bit first. With how much people love killing people, I wouldn't be surprised. Then they learned how to remove it as efficiently as possible and then figured why not cook the actual fish part left over. An assassin not wanting the whole fish to go to waste. Ever think about coffee beans? Hey, I'm gonna roast this seed, smash it up and drown it in hot water. Bet it tastes great. The legend is that a goat herder saw his goats eat the coffee berries and then get all hyper. We are all familiar with the legend of the goat herder. You see that dock out there? Built it myself, handcrafted each piece, and it's the best dock in town. But do they call me McGregor the dock builder? No. And you see that bridge over there? I built that, took me 2 months, through rain, sleet and scorching weather, but do they call me McGregor the bridge builder? No. And you see that pier over there? I built that, best pier in the county. But do they call me McGregor the pier builder? No. The old guy looks around, and makes sure that nobody is listening, and leans to the man, and he says, "But you fuck one sheep, especially the steps along the way. Raw and boiling water, no. Roasted in boiling water but whole? No. Roasted, smashed, in boiling water? Bingo." One of the really funny things are alcohol, coffee and tea from a community health perspective. When your water quality sucks, boiling the water or having alcohol in it is a sterilizing process, so you're actually going to see a healthier community with those practices. What the fuck was bread guy doing? What compelled him to collect tiny pieces of grain, dry them out, smash them into a powder, get them wet again, but not too wet, and then put the whole thing over fire? I think the best guess with bread is that someone stored porridge somewhere that got really hot and baked it. Or they heated up porridge over a fire too long? Agreed. I expect this was from iterations on errors that resulted in something stable and edible. No, the first person to ever bake bread actually made a baguette by accident. I thought it was a really nice basil and sundried tomato focaccia. I want to say flatbreads were made first and then yeast came into the picture. What's amazing is we've been using yeast for thousands of years and it's not until microscopes do we really show that it's alive. The real question was who collects the wild grains to experiment with that encourages agriculture in the first place. Cooking almost certainly comes first, and there is evidence that our ancestors were cooking food way before Homo sapiens even shows up. One plausible sequence of events is: ancestors gather grains, remove the hulls and eat them. That's not too appetizing. So you start adding some water to soften things up and start cooking up rudimentary porridges. Porridges cook easier if you crack up the grain seeds into little bits, bigger surface area. Once you're cracking seeds to make porridge, you notice that it's worth making the cracked grain smaller and smaller as it both improves the texture and speeds the cooking time. If you keep following that logic, it leads you to try powdering the grains. If you're trying to powder grains, it seems plausible that people might notice that drying the cracked grains aids this process. Alongside this, you likely have people experimenting with the amount of liquid in the porridge. Add more liquid for gruel-like things. Add less and less until you discover cookable pastes, i.e. rudimentary doughs. Once you have rudimentary dough, then unleavened breads immediately follow. You can even do away with the cooking pot and cook things on hot rocks that you arrange around or pull from the fire. You can then change the order you're adding the water. Make the dough ahead of time, store it and cook it only when you want to eat it. And this opens up the door to leavened bread. That some of that dough you left lying around gets inoculated with wild yeast, goes fizzy and starts to fill with gas. And what do? If it smells bad, then throw it away. If it smells nice, cook it and see. Next, someone notices if you add some of the good fizzy dough to the next batch, it also goes good and fizzy, and now you have bread starters. Now that might not be the exact sequence of events, but I think it illustrates that there are small incremental steps all the way from gathering grains to making leavened breads where each step is useful, edible. Yeah, I think your explanation is pretty much the consensus theory on this. Everything humans have discovered or invented is a mix of trial, error, experimentation, observation, and dumb luck accidents. I'm guessing beer was discovered when some prehistoric farmer made a big grain pile during the harvest. Then it rained and the pile soaked for a couple days, and then when he eventually made porridge out of it, he noticed it made him feel kinda funny. Then this happened a few more times until someone was like, what if we added even more water to this and let it sit out for even longer? Which really begs the question, what delicious, nutritious food are we missing because we haven't discovered it yet? Let the trial and error commence. I'm gonna eat this table leg. Dude, you don't just eat it. Haven't you learned anything from this thread? You gotta collect tiny pieces of the table leg, dry them out, smash them into a powder, get them wet again, but remember not to wet, and then put the whole thing over a fire. Long before man baked anything, they were making flatbread, nearly every civilization on the planet. Leavened bread didn't appear out of nowhere, it was an evolution. Beer before bread is an interesting theory. Cashews and chocolate are my big two. How did you all figure it out and why? So many steps. Why cashews? The first person to eat an oyster, how hungry was that motherfucker? Hey guys, I found a luigi in this slimy rock. Want some? I imagine a lot of food discoveries came down to, do I eat this weird looking thing or starve to death? Then they enjoyed it and told their friends. Probably also watching other animals eat things. Maybe not quite food, but like tobacco and marijuana. The amount of trial and error of just smoking random things to see what happens must have been an interesting time.